It's all in our hands, this life of time that's given to us all. It gathers round each night, each morn. We watch it pass and grow. It is all in our hands, it is all in our hands.
One day, I believe in the future. I believe in the past. I believe what you truly desire, you can bring to pass. All you need is a focus and a story to hold, and the faith that you can achieve what's inside your soul. Someday we'll make it on by. Other days we only can try. Either way, no matter what people say, either way, we're gonna get. Someday we'll make it on by. Someday. Other days we only can try. Either way, no matter what people say, either way, we're gonna get better. Know that you can make it. Hold it tight, cause they will try to take it. Keep it close, cause they will try to shake it. But whatever you do, don't let them break it. Cause this moment's just a new chance to take into your own hands and shape the life you see inside your dreams. Someday we'll make it on by. Someday. Other days we only can try. Either way, no matter what people say. Either way, we're gonna get. Someday we'll make it on. Someday we'll make it. Other days we only can try. Either way, no matter what people say. Either way, we're gonna get better. In your heart there lives a dream for your soul to master. From the moment that you breathe, get to chasing after. Yeah. All that you want, all that you ever dreamed. You can make anything of this life. Someday we'll make it on by. Other days we only can try. Someday we only try. No matter what people say. Either way, we're gonna get. Someday we'll make it on by. Someday. Other days we only can try. Other days, no matter what people say. No matter what they say, we gonna get. Someday we'll make it on by. Someday. Other days we only can try. Other days, no matter what people say. Either way, we're gonna get better. Someday we'll make it on by. Other days we only can try. Either way, no matter what people say. We're gonna get. Someday we'll make it on by. Other days we only can try. Either way, no matter what people say. Either way, we're gonna get better.
HeARTland Creative Corps is a grant program designed to give wages and salaries to artists to create projects for Merced, Stanislaus, and Tuolumne counties. In 2021, the California State Legislature passed a $60 million general fund allocation to the California Arts Council to implement the Creative Corps program. HeARTland Creative Corps is an offshoot of that, as we are representing our area to administer this program. If you want to apply for funding, you need an idea. You need a project that you're passionate about. Other than that, you need to write the grant. We've made it as easy and as accessible as possible, and we've even identified partner agencies within your community to help you with this process. We've also identified team members here at United Way to walk you through parts of the process if writing grants is unfamiliar to you. If you'd like to apply, we encourage you to go to heartlandcreativecorps.org. You're also encouraged to reach out via email at info@heartlandcreativecorps.org. If you have further questions, we'll put you in contact with a member of our partner agencies to reach out to you to kind of help you through this process. The 4 focus areas for the program consist of, number 1, public health messages surrounding the spread of COVID within our communities. Number 2, public awareness related to water and energy conservation, climate change, emergency preparedness and relief. Number 3, civic engagement, including voting participation. And number 4, social justice and community engagement. If you have an idea for a project, and you don't know necessarily how it fits into one of those 4 program focus areas, we encourage you to reach out to one of our partner agencies to talk about your project to see if they can help you figure that out. We want to, again, be able to help you out as the organization or as the artist to serve you as well as we can to be able to apply for this funding. If you'd like to apply, we encourage you to go to heartlandcreativecorps.org. You're also encouraged to reach out via email at info@heartlandcreativecorps.org. If you have further questions, we'll put you in contact with a member of our partner agencies to reach out to you to kind of help you through this process. The requirements for individuals is you have to be 18 years of age and you have to have a minimum of 2 years of experience within the arts field of your choice. Other than that, our team will work with you to help craft the grant proposal, to work with you in regards to your resume, previous experience. We want to help you even if you've never applied for a grant before in your life. If you'd like to apply, we encourage you to go to heartlandcreativecorps.org. You're also encouraged to reach out via email at info@heartlandcreativecorps.org. If you have further questions, we'll put you in contact with a member of our partner agencies to reach out to you to kind of help you through this process.
All right. Hey, well, welcome. I'm Colton Dennis, Executive Director of the Merced County Arts Council.
I'm Rob Hypes. I'm the interim CEO of the United Way of Merced County.
And this is the beginning of our Q&A for the HeARTland Creative Corps grant. Before we begin, I would like to do a land acknowledgement since we are, this is going throughout outside this building. The Merced County Arts Council and the Multicultural Arts Center acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded land of the Okoot's and Sierra Miwok peoples. We also acknowledge that this land was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples. This acknowledgement is to honor and respect the original stewards of this land and demonstrates our commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And you could find our land acknowledgement statement online at artsmerced.org. Now, we're assuming at this stage that people mostly know about what the HeARTland Creative Corps is about. And these are for specific questions to help you with your projects and the grant application. But in the meantime, maybe we should give a synopsis or a quick summary, Rob, since you're the expert at this, to do a quick summary of what the grant is about.
So the HeARTland Creative Corps is part of the California Creative Corps grant program, which was designed to be a jobs creator all throughout California to supply work and a salary level of pay to artists all over California. So the legislature, they allocated, I believe, $42 million. Was it 42?
It was $60 million.
$60 million. $60 million to be distributed amongst the residents of California. And the way that the California Arts Council did this was they put out a competitive grant process to various administering organizations all throughout the state. We were approached by 3 different arts councils in Merced, Stanislaus, and Tuolumne at United Way to be their administrative arm for this grant process under the basis that they saw a need for smaller arts organizations to have a say in the level of funding that was arriving into our valley. That a lot of times when competitive grant processes like this came out, very often larger organizations, usually in more urban areas, got funded, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it happens. So they approached United Way Merced County to help supply a little extra administrative and grant expertise. And so we came on board as the administrative organization. We wrote the grant. We somehow managed to receive the grant, which is overall $4.2 million.
When he says we wrote the grant, Rob did all that work. He actually wrote the grant.
Well, I say because you helped. And,
we did put input, that's for sure, but the bulk of it was.
And so we established our entire program runs a little different than some of the other AOs that you may have been seeing over the last several months. Our organization we operate at United Way as the administrative body. We handle all of the overall oversight, administration work. We'll be handling a lot of the paperwork as it comes along. And we identified the 3 arts councils in Merced, Stanislaus, and Tuolumne as our official partner agencies. And their work is designed to work with all of you, the artists, and getting these grants together and reaching out to the communities and working with you to kind of create the most optimized version of a grant that you can to be really competitive in this process. And we want to provide them the capacity to be able to do so that way we can prove to the state that funding, especially in small rural communities, is vital. It's important. And amazing artwork is being created in our communities, and you don't have to be located in some of these big urban centers to be considered an amazing artist, that it's happening right here where we're at. Yeah. And so that is the goal, that the entire basis of why we all worked on this. Before I worked at United Way, I have 20 years of experience working in the arts, especially in Merced County. And so I've worked in the arts for a large part of my life. And so it is always near and dear to me. So I want to fight for artists in our area and make sure that we get funding. So that's why we're here, and that's why we've been working together over the last 3 months, and why we're here today to answer your questions and help you out.
So we do have guidelines with us, but you could get guidelines at heartlandcreativecorps.org. So make sure to go there. That's where you'd apply as well. So you have an online application, but we also have a paper version as well, and that's on the website now.
Yep,
too?
you can download it.
Okay, and you could download that for those. And it's really nice to actually, we have a paper version, a hard copy version that you could download. And even if you're not going to use this to turn in, but it helps to get your thoughts organized before you put everything into the online application. So it's helpful. But everything you should, for the most part, everything is up there, all the guidelines, everything you should need to know. But obviously, this is a new thing for us. It's a new thing. It's a pilot program for the state of California, so it's definitely new to us too. And so we're all guinea pigs in this. So there are questions that that come up all the time because we don't necessarily have answers for them yet. So we're all kind of in this together, but we have the resources to get the answers to you. That being said, I mean, who's brave enough? And Andrew's monitoring online too. So if anyone has questions online, Andrew will. And Andrew, is that you have to question on like YouTube? You get on the YouTube and the YouTube. I sound like a senior right now. Sorry, that's right. But you get on the YouTube, right? And you comment on the YouTube, not like Facebook. You're not necessarily monitoring Facebook or anything like that.
No, yeah,
so it has to be YouTube.
Live chat going on YouTube right now. Nobody's got any questions right
Okay.
now. But as soon as we do, I will wave or throw something at you, and I will let you know.
Awesome. So anyone that's online there, you can ask us questions. But in the meantime, we have all of you here who's brave enough to step up to, yes, Karina, yes. You guys get arm wrestle.
Okay, so one question that I've had, I had the opportunity to attend the webinars that Kern Dance Alliance provided.
Yeah.
There wasn't a good opportunity to exchange more in-depth questions
Sure.
and then to break it down more. So the question I have is the review board that will receive all the applications, will they be familiar with the multiple variety of disciplines of art that will be, offered? For myself, I've heard here, I think painter, sculptor on this end.
Yeah,
I'm a filmmaker, so I'm not sure about everybody else. So it became very apparent through the webinar that at least the people that were communicating with us, they weren't as familiar with film.
Mm-hmm.
Because the questions I would ask, and I thought, yeah, how is this going to, on here at Heartland, how is that covered? So
Yeah, and that's come up with other grants too. There's another interesting grant opportunity. It's an artist fellowship program with the California Arts Council for emerging artists. You get up to $5,000. Established artists is $10,000. And for legacy artists, that's $50,000 unrestricted funding that anyone's encouraged to apply for. And the deadline for that is May 5th. And that's come up several times with a lot of these other grants as well. We're trying to do our best, but I'll let Rob give us the details of this panel that's going to be selected that hasn't been selected yet.
Yes, and so I totally understand where you're coming from, just with the conversations that we've had over the last few weeks with artists all over the place. And this is and so your concern or your questions are held by many as far as who gets to define, what I do and whether or not that's an art form or not. And that's why step one, we have tried to avoid in constructing the review process, even the questions that are asked, any sort of question that limits what art really is. And if you kind of notice in the review section of the guidelines, Heartland doesn't ask that question. We don't ask what you think as a panelist about this person's art, right? And that is, again, to supply this as unbiased as review as we can through this process. The review panel is made up of 7 members of the 3 counties that we represent. That's a variety of, this is where it gets really hard when you're trying to panel an arts grant, is because all of the artists are applying apparently, which is good, but they're all applying for the funding. So we knew as we're making this panel that they can't include people that are applying for funding, that we can't include even to a degree like people that serve on boards of nonprofits that are applying for funding. And so we're limiting what we're doing based off of that first. And we're finding 2 people from Merced County, 2 people from Tuolumne County, and 2 people from Stanislaus County. Each person that we're finding is bringing something different to their own, to the table, right? We're not looking for 7 muralists and be like, now I need you to panel this arts grant. So it's we're aiming for not just a wide variety of respect for art forms, but also again the communities in which they live, in which they work, in which they deal with every single day. Because a huge part of this grant obviously is serving these communities in that bottom quartile of the Healthy Place Index. So we'll have 6 people, 2 from each county, and then there is a regional representative made up by someone from, chosen specifically by someone from United Way of Merced County, whether that is someone that deals very frequently in regional grants or large scale grants like at this, but that is again to make sure that we have supplied someone there that has no ties to the 3 partner agencies that we have. There will be a training involved with every panelist that is selected, as well as a check-in in the middle of the paneling process, and then as well as a check-in at the very end of the paneling process, again, but conducted by a member from our team. We have someone, Janet Casper, who works on our program, who has spent decades in both compliance as well as state, federal, local grants. And so her entire job moving into this next part of the process is to make sure that we're able to present as fair, unbiased process as we can. The panelists that are chosen will all have a respect for a variety of art forms, whether or not they're artists themselves. Like I said, all the artists are applying, especially in a lot of these communities, and they also represent a nice cross-section of the communities in which we're looking to affect and engage. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because if a panel is unfamiliar with the filmmaking process, because one of the questions I had asked was, they specified artist, technician, administrative positions, and I said, well, how do you classify the first or the camera operator, technician? How do you classify the editor, a technician? And it was like, whoa.
Oh no, an editor is an artist.
Yep.
As someone that does editing in their free
That'll be part of
time.
the training
That's totally
too,
an artist.
right? I mean,
Good luck showcasing your movie without the editor present. You don't have a movie. You just got a lot. You have like your 75 hours of nothing.
Right.
Without the editor present.
You yourself are familiar with filmmaking. I know you're very familiar with it, actually, both of you. And so from the editing standpoint, I was just like, taken aback. And I thought, there's a problem here, because if I present the budget and I've got a decent wage for the editor, and they're putting that person in the technical, that means they're part of what this grant is specifies 20%. And that'll eat up into other things. These are the things that I'm concerned about.
Our grant, we try, our first and foremost goal is we're slightly different than the other KDA. We're offering opportunities for artists, and then the Creative Corps line item, which is that 20%. But all through the last few weeks, we've been working with artists to list artists as artists and convincing them that they are artists. And part of the training process for the panel is the panel that is selected as being very thoroughly versed in the different art forms that are available. And the great thing about working with the partner agencies that we have been working with is we're bringing Colton's wide array of experience in his location, but also his experience working at the gallery, but also his experience working both in film, both in theater, both in the performing arts. Lori from Tuolumne is coming from this really incredible visual art, found art space, and also works in Tuolumne, which is very huge, especially with like storytellers. Colton comes from working with a lot of spoken word poets, and David from Stanislaus is both a photographer and also has been involved in performing arts and hugely involved in opera as well. And so when myself and Colton and Lori and David are all there in that beginning phase to be like, this is how HeARTland classifies art, our hope is to be able to make that very clear that we're not here to tell you what is art and what isn't art. We're here to look at the grant that you wrote and to be able then to look at that and score it from there.
So individual artists can have paid other artists under them to help too, right?
Yes.
Yes, they can.
All right, and you can have like somebody help run things for you too.
Yeah, assistant. Yeah, you're the artistic assistant, another artist that's working with
They don't count
you.
under budget, they count under the.
They'll be under salary. And two, to clarify, there has been some flexibility within the salary budget part. We can go all the way down to 60%.
No, 80%. So it's to be clear, we go down to 60. Like the HeARTland organization,
Right, okay.
As far as writing the grant is, I always want to keep in mind a minimum of 80% of your grant needs to be for artist salaries. That's a minimum. You can have 90% just to artist salaries. You can have 100% to just artist salaries. But a minimum has to be 80%. And that, in a way, gives you a little wiggle room, especially as you're working with our team and kind of constructing these grants. If you, knowing that you can pay artists more, hire more artists, or how you want to approach that kind of changes, just knowing that number.
We have a question from chat. How will you score the grant applications were considered local, but will be including funds to pay artists outside of the community that come with more experience in specified art to teach workshops?
That's a lot. That's a big question. So the major, I'm going to start with this. The major thrust of the HeARTland Creative Corps process is we're giving out grants to hire artists to create projects within the communities that we represent. Those projects need to be presented to the public somehow, and without any fee, ticket price. It should be presented free while the grant period lasts. And that grant period will last until June 30th, 2024. So first and foremost, because I have been dealing a lot with teaching and workshops, and first and foremost, you have to make sure that if you are adding a workshop, whether or not that classifies as a project, a piece of art that you are creating as the artist involved in that. A lot of times we're not funding programs. We're not funding classes. We're funding projects. And I'm willing to work with you, and our team is available to work with you to kind of help clarify that in your mind, or even how to take your idea and kind of adapt that to the grant process. But I just want to be clear that we're funding projects, not programs.
But that's not to say that if you're trying to do a community engaged project, that you have a series of workshops that encourages the community, but at the end of all that series of workshops, you'd have to have a definitive project.
Yeah, a definitive, something was created at the end of this process. And what was the first part of that question, Andrew?
The out of town from,
Yes.
now it depends too if they're from out of Merced, out of the county that they're applying for and out of state. There's a difference there too. You wanna-
All artists that are being employed via this grant, at the bare minimum, have to be Californian artists. They cannot be artists from out of state. That's the bare minimum. Our grant in particular rewards the artists that are working within the 3 counties that we represent. I don't want to say rewards, but this is the problem when things are streamed. Sometimes I use the wrong word, so please forgive me. Let me look at this specific wording real quick before I move on. You would think the amount of times that I've spoken about. Let's see here.
Yeah, I'm wondering if and this question does come up quite often, because yeah, it makes sense, right? You want to have the best people on your project, so it's really an important question.
Yeah.
How that affects the rubric scoring, right?
Yeah. And so one is the first 2 questions that we have for our particular grant application are not they're not paneled, they're not scored. They're just scores based off of you as the applicant and your relationship to the Healthy Place Index and where you are creating your project. So the first question is you as the applicant, where your proximity to the community in the bottom quartile of the HPI. Like, where do you live? And then the second question deals with where is the project being planned? Is it being planned in this community? Where the project is being implemented? Where the project is being showcased, and finally where the project is being evaluated. So all of those things need to be important parts of the grant that you write, because that is how we kind of tell who is working on the project and where is the project being created. We are putting the emphasis on artists within the areas that we represent, but we're not, again, if artists are being hired outside of the counties, you as the lead applicant must be working within our county or our 3 counties that we represent. You have to be working within the 3 counties, or your project in particular has got to have a focus
Yes.
on our 3 counties.
So hopefully that answers that question.
Hopefully.
Any other questions here? Eddie? Do you want to go ahead and that way we can hear you better on the online?
And you guys tell me I have several questions, but I can ask one and then
Yeah,
wait.
let's just ask one at a time.
Okay. So with the Healthy Places Index, looking at the map, let's say my project is intended to help every zip code of our county. Will it hurt having included areas of our county that don't fall under the bottom quartile?
It won't hurt.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you're focusing on the lower quartile, but it just happens that there are some ones that are going to be higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see that being a problem.
Absolutely. And again, to just stress the goal, right, is we approached this project as an AO because we wanted to, represent communities that very often are overlooked. And so as artists yourselves, we want to, again, remind you of that, is there's several communities in our counties that are overlooked continually. And sometimes, while it's well and good to continue to develop artwork within the same location every single time, look beyond that. And everyone in our community deserves access to art. And that's what this grant is designed to do.
Yeah, I would suggest in that narrative, making sure that you are hitting those areas where they don't have that much access to the arts. Really emphasize that. Any other questions? All right. Well, hey, Eddie, if there are no other questions, right?
Chad's got plenty more questions.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Let's,
perfect.
maybe between you and Chad, we'll
Wait a
just go
second.
back and forth. But I encourage anyone, if you have just even an inkling of a question or some clarification, please don't hesitate to come up and ask, because someone else might have that same question.
So Chad would like to know, in regards to the job creation aspects, do we have to have individuals stated in the personnel salaries, or can we just include the roles?
You can include just the roles. You don't have to have specific people, but you will be asked eventually to provide names, and that is California Arts Council has set rules based off of double dipping and is actively trying to prevent that from happening. And by double dipping, I mean an artist that is being utilized on several different grants and being provided a significant sum from multiple grants in our area. And so that is just a guideline laid down by the California Arts Council that we have to follow. And so keep in mind that as an artist, that if you are working on many grants or numerous grants, you may be asked to choose. You may only be able to work on one. And so we just want to make that really clear to everyone moving forward.
Now, this question does come up a lot, Rob. So there might be a little bit of overlap. There might be a little bit of overlap. But I mean, if they're like in almost every, if they're in a lot, is there like a point where, I mean, they could do one or two possibly?
I'm gonna put my compliance hat on and say you feel free to apply, but just realize that you may have to choose, and you might have to choose which project that you want to work on, because again, since it's a new pilot project, obviously this goes into our notes of, well, wait a second, please keep in mind that a lot of times artists, work for numerous people and other projects, and this don't, maybe we don't like penalize someone for having a very specific set of skills within their community, but it's something to keep in mind. But just keep that aware, is that they're trying to really enforce this double dipping policy. But if you don't have an artist in mind when you write the grant, it's perfectly fine to like a bio, or I have an editor and this editor has this much experience and this is who I'm looking for. So Eddie.
Okay, so in terms of like services to produce the art, like whether it be like a metal fabricator or a publisher or something to that effect, having it within the HPI, will that benefit you? And then also, let's say you can't get estimates on the service in time for the April 15 cutoff, but you can find an estimate online for something that's not in our area. So just trying to figure that out, because I'm trying to get estimates from certain places that fall under the lower quartile, but I'm having trouble getting those answers, and I don't know if I'll get them in time.
So it's a budget adjustment, right? And so we're not necessarily allowing you to put in contingencies or a contingency line item where you're like, oh, here's my budget and here's 15% contingency. We're asking you to work the budget, the best budget that you can work by the time you have to turn the grant in, and knowing that we'll work with you over the course of the grant project. So us here, and our partner agencies, we're here with you this entire year, right? And so let's say you get approved for a grant and things change. Someone dropped out. You had an artist that his project got picked up and he's like, I can't do your project anymore. So maybe you'll need to change some things around. Then we'll work with you to create that budget adjustment. So that way it's we have that on file, and that's kind of where we're gauging you. So if you get your, if you get your quotes from an outside source, just know that, maybe you want to err a little bit on the side of caution, knowing that maybe locally it might be a little more expensive. So
But so I think another part of this question is, now he's already looked locally. He can't find the resources, and he has to go outside. Now, is that going to, in any way negate the scoring on that?
I don't think it would, because we're not scoring you based off of the.
Because it's more about the impact that it's
more about the
working
impact
in the community.
We're again, where you're planning the project, right, and where you're implementing the project. And so I would that's pretty much what you're talking about. But a lot of the planning, make sure that when you are writing the grant, that you spend more time in the planning phase within one of these areas within of the community.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And then the next question I have is, I know that it said one of the things the grant doesn't pay for is funding for schools. Let's say if your project will benefit, one of the groups that your project will benefit is education and schools, but it's not financially, you're not giving something to them financially, but you're giving them something that addresses one of the four categories in a different way.
I want to double check this, right? Because sometimes I get you're asking about what we do not fund. So I want to make sure I am.
Because it's not necessarily, you're saying it's not a school project. It's not for the schools necessarily, but it's going to impact them. Right? So
it can be used as a resource for schools.
For me, it doesn't seem like it should be a problem.
Oh, operational, administrative, or indirect cost of schools, colleges, or universities. So that means that a school cannot apply for the grant to pay for these issues. Yeah. So that doesn't cover, if you're doing something for the school as the artist, that's where you're creating your project is completely separate.
Okay. And then this is from another artist that couldn't make it today. So they just wanted to understand more about the evaluation process or like the fourth phase, if there's any clarification on what that looks like.
So, for instance, I'll use, let's say you create a mural. And so what you have done is over the course of your grant, you have based objectives based off of that mural, right? Like what you want to have happen, and then what you'll want to do as the artist is figure out how you're going to evaluate that. So let's say that you're trying to change attitudes of COVID-19 awareness, or you're trying to
Get the vote out.
Or anything along those lines. At one point, maybe you're like, okay, we're going to do an open reception for this mural. We've invited 100 plus people here. And over the course of the evening, we're going to have you fill out a quick survey. What are your thoughts about this mural? Like, what are your thoughts? What were you thinking about COVID-19 before you came today? Have your thoughts changed, right? So it's not, it's basing your outcomes, figure out what your outcomes are in the grant, which is one of the questions that we have, and then so your evaluation process is you evaluating the public's kind of response to what was created off of those outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful.
And I believe the partnering agencies can help out with these kind of things as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the partner agencies could be there to really be a good resource for that.
And then there's the last question also from an artist that couldn't make it tonight. So once awarded, could you talk about what happens? Let's say you apply and you get awarded the grant. What happens after that point?
So this is a process that I just had a meeting today about. So let's keep in mind that I think there are 14 AOs. I think there's 14
throughout the state of California.
Throughout the state of California. And they're all doing their various programs at like in this weird Wild West version of this Creative Corps process. So
make it up as they go along.
And each one of us has a different program that we're running, and sometimes so we have to report everything back to the state first and foremost, right? So let's say that you received funding, we would let you know, we would notify you. Before we notify you, we would contact the state. The state has a list of everyone that's been awarded, every artist or organization that's been awarded, and they have their own list. So we double check that list. In the case for us, we'll double check with KDA and see who they funded, right? Because that's gonna change what's going on with us, right? They're like, well, wait a second, we funded these people and these people. well, we were going to fund these people, but now we can't. This person, there's double dipping here. So there's a certain level of conversation that has, and it's all based on who has gone first. So we have to check with every organization in the state that has released their funding before us. If there's, and on top of that, funding is based off of your score. So whether or not you end up getting 100% of funding or 90%, 85% based off of what your end score is after the evaluation. So then you will be contacted as the artist, right? Let's say you receive the grant, you're contacted and we say, hey, by the way, we wanted to talk to you. This is how much funding you'll receive. We wanted to give you the opportunity to accept that funding, to rework your grant a little bit to now you have to figure out whether or not you can even make that work, depending on what the total amount of funding was. Once all of that is worked out, then what we do is then we release the funding to you. So then we fill out all of the necessary paperwork. If you're an artist, there's a little bit of paperwork that we're gonna have to fill out at the United Way level, and then we do direct deposit into your account. And our hope is that best practices, like everything goes swimmingly well, and there's no major climate disasters in between now and then, is that artists have funding by no later than June 1st. And you're able to start your project. And you have a full year to be able to produce your projects. And we are giving you 100% of the funding. So it's no question of, hey, give us a report before we can give you, this next step or this next step. What we do instead is we give you the 100% of the funding, and then you're in constant contact with our partner agency in whatever county that you're working in, and they're reaching out to you to make sure that you're fulfilling all of the reporting you need to fulfill.
Follow-up question on that, Rob. Now, say you only get a percentage of what you asked for. Mm-hmm. You still, as an artist, you could decline that, right?
Yeah.
I know that's come up a few times.
Yeah.
But if you don't get the full amount that you asked for, there are still ways to subsidize the rest of the amount. So you could still get through another grant or sponsorship or some other way to subsidize that extra money you need to get that project going.
So yeah, you're able to turn it down, but it's like usually, and the reduced funding, the percentage, those are kind of based off of, total amount of applicants, the scores that are coming through, whether or not, all of a sudden there's a lot of 6s or 5s or 4s at that point, 3s. So it's all kind of based off of that, as well as, the communities that we represent and making sure that they have their funding that they were promised. But then let's say, for instance, one county didn't release all of their funding, but they only have like a small amount left. So can that funding then go to this other county? So it's those things that will happen just to make sure that all this works. So like I said, it's going to be an interesting 2.5, 3 weeks of like the portal closes. And at that point, then we go to real work, because then, there's going to be a lot that has to happen, not only from our level, but from KDA, the state, and then even back to us. So it's going to be intense.
Yeah, and part of that process too, as soon as you submit your application, it goes to United Way to make sure that everything's filled out properly. And then once it goes through them and everything's fine, it goes to the partnering agency. So if you're doing it here in Merced County, it'd be with the Arts Council here. And then if there's any more fine tuning, we could do a one-on-one with any organization or an individual artist to make sure go over that. Is this the best possible narrative? Is this the best possible work samples that we could use, And then it's going to go to the panel that ultimately will score the application.
And ultimately, when it goes to the panel, it'll go as anonymously as it can, where your identity as the artist is kind of blocked out. And so again, it's it'll go before them, and they'll be able to approach it with really fresh eyes. And no one at that point, no one on the panel or working with the panel will have served in any capacity. on the grant. So I will not have any dealings with the panel once the panel is selected, Colton either, because that way there's a very clear separation between the people that have been helping you and then the people then that will be looking at your applications.
Great. Any more questions online?
Yes. Are larger / more expensive projects more desired than small, simple things? For example, a single painting.
No, I mean, no. Well, I want to be clear: is all artwork and all levels of time is accepted and should be accepted. And there obviously is this huge rush out there to ask for as much money as you possibly can, because this is the only chance you feel like this is the only chance I'm going to have to ask for all of this money. But keep in mind that this project's also designed for someone that, it wants to do one painting and just has a really awesome idea or has been affected by one of those 4 program areas and just wants to do something very small and just wants to be compensated for it.
Yeah.
So there's room for that, and there should be room for that.
You don't have to ask for the maximum amount.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's a finite amount of funding across, even 60 million goes really fast in California. And so our goal is to fund as many projects and artists as we can, and to make sure we walk with them as they create their projects, so that way we can showcase it to the state and encourage them to keep this coming.
And talking with a lot of artists, some of the artists find it very difficult to find the worth of their time, money. I was talking to an artist earlier today who thought they had to have more projects to make their time, what they're asking for, worth it. I think there are a lot of artists that are too humble. They should be asking for what they deserve, but you got to also think of the scope of the project and that impact in the community too. So you got to balance it. You got to find that sweet spot, but don't undersell yourself. I think for too long, especially in our area in the Central Valley, we short sell ourselves. And as artists, and as a culture in our community too, we're so used to say, hey, can you do this and you'll get exposure? Do it for free. And we often do that way too much. And it's time that we pay our artists. So don't be too humble. Just be humble enough to look at that scope, how big that is and where it's going to fit in. And be mindful too that, $1 million sounds like a lot. We're $1 million-ish is what we're getting for Merced County. It seems like a lot, but if you have 10 people applying for $100,000, it's going to go like that. So, try to be mindful too. We want this money to go to as many artists and projects as possible. Just think of that scope and that impact. That impact is part of that scope, the impact of the community that you're trying to bring this project to. Any other? Oh, we had a question here, right?
Yes, I do have.
All right.
So as far as like the past project, what are you looking for? Like picture or mural? Because some of our artists paint the temple, like culturally. So are you looking for like picture? What are you looking for?
Past work samples?
Yes.
Yeah, images are great. I mean, pictures of past work is what they need.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's up to you. It's your opportunity to showcase your artist and what your, what they can do. It's not necessarily, and it's also not a game changer. Like if you can't find something, again, we'll work with you, especially Colton will work with you to find something, but it's not a game. It's not like it doesn't end your game, right?
Absolutely.
If you can't find something that you think is appropriate.
And I think too, that goes with like filmmakers, like video. Someone was asking like, hey, if I did a compilation of film that I've done, is that acceptable for my work samples?
I think it lists there that it's like under a minute or it's a minute or something like that.
There's a certain time, as long as you're in that time limit for a video. I think it was like 3 minutes.
Yeah, and you can provide a Vimeo link, a YouTube link. You can provide links to, especially if you have video samples of things, and that helps too. Because I know especially if you're a videographer, you're like, I can't put this video out in under 1 megabyte, guys. It's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
So
A link's good. Yeah. You have a follow-up question?
Yes, I have another question. For example, some of our project, we have like a music camp. At the end of the music camp, we have performance, like at Merced Playhouse and the theater. So would that be considered a project as an example right there?
it could be, it's how you approach it, how you write the grant, and approach it as a project and less as a workshop or a camp or a class. You know, very often, you know, we've all decided that we're going to become teachers because we're like, you know, we tried this artist thing and it didn't really work out, so I'm going to become a teacher instead. And then we start to think of ourselves as teachers. So we're trying to convince, he's like, no, go back a few years. Remember when you're an artist, just remember that the community that you're engaging could be any age. The other, you know, community that you're inviting to participate in this project could be any age, you know, but you're an artist. So approach it with that mentality. And so how does my project fit, even in this camp feeling?
But so just to follow up, just make sure to clarify, a performance can be a project.
Absolutely. Performance is a project.
An exhibition can be the end project. Right.
Yeah, and there's many ways that we can talk, and Colton's really good at this too, that you can talk about what is that project, how does this end? Does it end in a performance? Does it end in a showing? Does it end in an exhibition somewhere at a place? Does it end in like a talk back in a coffee house? Maybe I wrote a book. You know, I wrote like this illustrated book. So I'm just going to have a talk back, and I'm going to give away free copies of this book that I wrote, and we're going to talk about this children's book that I wrote. That is an exhibition, right? That's a showcase of the project you created.
Yeah.
So yes, so another follow-up question that I have is, so for personnel and salary, you got, I see that is like there's project manager. Is fiscal manager allowed in there because like to manage the dollars and stuff?
No, fiscal manager is not allowed on this particular part of the grant project. And I would be wary of the project manager because we've had, so what happened is we allowed the project manager, then everyone that was applying started to say, well, there's a project manager, and then couldn't clearly list it as an artist. And so we've since gone back to start to work with organizations and artists about, well, what exactly is the project manager doing? And how do we classify them more as an artist? And that's what I would look at more.
Or cultural worker.
Cultural worker could work in that particular rather than a project manager, but keep that in mind. Rather than, but I don't believe a fiscal manager
I don't
would
think
work
that
in
would.
project.
But a project manager, such as, I don't know, if you had like a community liaison working with the community members to create this, I mean, that would be like a cultural worker.
I need a mask because I asked a lot of questions.
That's okay.
That's okay.
So you talk about we don't charge people, and then, you know, we provide books and supply. Like we have artists who are storyteller, culturally, like they write books and story, and they like read story to kids. And so the books is considered an incentive. Is incentive allowed in this? Kind of like we don't charge them, but then the supply to buy the books would be an incentive for them. Or like foods and stuff, food items
I see what you're
to
saying.
recruit them.
Oh, okay. So that'd be in the budget?
It could be, it could be listed in the budget under supplies, but as far as not charging, the way that I tell people is a member of the public, their ability to participate in your project could not be affected about whether or not they give you money to participate in that. And that's generally the rule of thumb that I try and give everyone, where you can't say, hey, pay for this book or pay for this, and then you can come see the show. Anyone from the community has to be able to come in to be able to participate in what you're creating.
Yeah. So, for instance, too, like if this is going to be something that is performed at another venue, a playhouse or Merced Theater, part of the budget would be renting that space so you don't have to charge tickets. But after this grant process, after June 30th, 2024, you could do whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
You own it.
You own
right?
that. And you
That's-
could charge if you need to for other places, because you're not, if you want to put that in another venue next year or something, then you could charge tickets. A ticket price.
I have a question. When you say part of grant and left over, that's my question is next to, if you give 100% grant, I don't know if everybody have any problem, but at the end, like the project that we wrote on, the grant, it happened to be canceled. We didn't get to pay them and left over, the money got left over. What would we do? Do we transfer for the next year?
Oh, if you have
Like the leftover, like the projects that's been canceled, we couldn't get anybody substitute, and then the deadline is, like the deadline's in. We're supposed to distribute all this fund out to our artists, but one of the project canceled, like we
Okay.
can't place it, and the grant, the money still left behind. What would you do?
That specific decision would have to be made by the California Arts Council. I would say is don't plan that you'd be able to postpone it to a different time. Like don't necessarily plan on that. And what would happen in that case is then in every contract MOU that we'll write with there will be a clawback clause as part of that contract, and so that way you understand that as the artist, if you're not adhering to the MOU that we've written, then there will be a recourse of United Way then asking for that funding back, because we would have to return that back to the California Arts Council. So.
The portion or the whole thing?
So it would be dependent on the level of reporting that you already have. So, for instance, let's say that you've already spent money on the project. You have your various receipts, or even, you've written, 1099s for other people that you may have hired. We would already have a little bit of reporting on that with our partner agencies and our accounting people, but we would determine how much funds had been spent. And how much funds are remaining, and then that's the amount that would be requested back, the funding that was remaining.
But I wonder in this case, in this scenario, because we do give some leeway because we know things are going to change throughout this process of creating this project. So if this person backs out, they can get a substitute.
Yeah, they can get a substitute. So let's say if you have a performer for a project, they back out at last minute, that you can work out with our finance team. You're like, well, this person backed out. Can we hire this person to come in to work? And that's acceptable. That's us modifying a budget. I'm talking about if you don't complete the project in the time period, what possibly could happen there. But like I said, all of those decisions would need to be made by the California Arts Council, depending on your circumstance.
Does
that help? Okay.
I have one more question, maybe two. Sorry. So as far as the letter of recommendation, we work, our organization have worked with the MAC. Would that be a conflict of interest or United Way? If we work with you guys, we cannot ask the MAC or the United Way for a letter of recommendation, or is that going to be a conflict of interest?
This has come up a couple times now.
My first step would be very specifically, if there's another arts organization that you can get a letter of recommendation from, you start with them. It's not precluding the MAC from that. Like I said, again, these proposals are going forward to a panel that has no preconceived notions of the amount of work that the MAC or the MAC staff has put into helping all of you. So that helps you. But I would say, if you have another arts organization that can serve as a reference, utilize that first. If all of your work has been just exclusively with the MAC, then I would what I would do is then I would talk to Colton about possibly either him writing one or getting his board to write a letter of support as far as a recommendation to you.
Yeah, and I think you've worked with so many different organizations. I think you have quite a few that you could choose from too.
Yes.
And I do wonder too. I've been asked to do letters of recommendations, and I don't want panelists to see like, well, this is, I'm sure that people have other groups and individuals that they've worked with, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
But I'd encourage to try to get those others. I think for the most part, if it's our arts council, I think they're like hoping that we have these connections with our groups and our artists. So.
Well, one last question that I have is like, if for like musician and band, like we were in our culture, we have kind of like the culture band that they can, if we schedule like something like a multiple singer, and the end project would be have those band together and to spread, like to have people register to vote. Would that be considered one of the projects?
That you're putting on an event that's encouraging people to vote.
Yes.
That hits
one of the program areas. The civic participation specifically lists for projects asking for people to encourage them to vote and take part of that process. And so what you're doing is you're putting on an event to do that. And here are the artists that you're hiring as part of this event. And the event itself is the project that you are doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a question that came up in my head. When they're encouraging us, one of the projects for voting, is that just a general voting? It's not like to vote for a certain, candidate, or how, do you know what the... It's not in general voting, right? Encouraging people to participate in their civic
Encouraging people to participate in civic duties, participation. That if you're a nonprofit, you have your very own laws and regulations based off of endorsements and what you can do.
Right.
So
and individual artists?
Individual artists, so that's where it gets a little rougher. Okay. There is a... hold on. So what we do not fund, I'll read this so that we were clear, is lobbying activities that intend to influence the actions, policies, or decisions of government officials or specific legislation. Okay. Right?
So basically it is just general, like just to get out, it's important to vote.
But and on the same hand, though, we're not necessarily trying to tell you, what is art or what isn't art. Just be aware. I mean, just be aware of what the California's Arts Council does not fund, and then what they will not fund. So,
yeah. Do we have any more online?
Yeah, we have a few. Just one real quick.
Okay.
Can the grant include training for artists if it applies to the project? And then the follow-up is, how about paying a California organization or artist?
You can pay artists, organizational. I'd have to look at the grant. I'd have to see the specific grant regarding artists or organizations outside of the county. Because if you're applying as an individual artist, be wary of then trying to then subcontract to an organization outside of the county. Outside of the county. I'd have to see what that group is, because and this goes back to, if you're an individual artist, please keep in mind that before you apply, please consult with a financial advisor regarding the process, because every rule applies. You will be given a 1099 at the end of the year that
can have taxes.
Showcases the amount of income that you raise, right? So just keep that in mind first, so consult a financial advisor. The grant does not say that you cannot hire artists outside of the counties that we represent. It's just that the project itself has to have a very important aspect of the project. It needs to be in the 3 counties that we represent. I don't know if there's necessarily any funding for training artists. And again,
well, that could be like a workshop. I mean, if you're doing a workshop to create a certain project, an art project for the ultimate end project, I wonder, that could be a form of training.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know,
I guess it's how they go about and how they are encouraging the community of artists to participate in this, perhaps.
the community engagement aspect, I think, is what you would really hit home as far as the grant application is how you're engaging your community. This is the artist that we're hiring. This is the artist's expertise. The artist is going to engage these community members to create this as part of my overall project.
But I'd probably suggest this, whoever this is, Andrew, to give one of us an email so we can, like, you know, see what exactly they're talking about and have a follow up with them. Oh yeah, so
yeah, it's not that I'm so brave here. It's just I'm soft spoken. Okay, I just want to follow up with his questions about that doing something like for the what is it, the voting. For us, it's more like to encouraging our Southeast Asian people the awareness of the civic duty.
awesome.
So it's not that
Yeah.
personal. I mean, we have to pick this party or this policy or whatnot. It's just encouraging Southeast Asian people.
Yeah.
That's one of the project that we was talking about. Another thing is you experience that with the New Year things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the New Year thing is more like, if I'm not misunderstood, the one that's showcasing, right? It's the finishing of the product is the showcasing. The New Year is like, to us, is showcasing. It's behind it. There's so many things going on. So it's like music-wise, training the kid to dance, culture dance, and sculpture, like for those animals for on the floats and stuff. Are those including, if we're gonna submit the grant? I mean, are those we can put this into the projects?
Are you talking about almost two different projects? One for the civic participation part.
Yeah,
and one
those
for
are the two
the
different
celebration. Organizationally, you can only you can only really choose one project to produce, unless that project is part of a series, right? If you're like, here's the series that we're doing over the course of a year,
Okay.
that is how you could make that as part of your grant. We're doing, we're engaging in these 3 different events. Event number 1 deals primarily with civic participation. Event number 2 is engaging the community, and this, I think that's number 4, right? Engaging.
4.
Event number 3 is talking about COVID-19. So each of these events hits these program areas, and we're bringing on artists from all over to help produce these events.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Great.
So are you? Would this be part of the next year's Lao New Year? Perhaps is that what you're?
Yes,
saying too?
it will be the end at I will say next New Year event will be our last event for that. During that, I mean, before that we will do, before this November we'll do something like encouraging people do civic duty things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So it'll be like a component of the Lao New Year for next year.
yes.
Okay.
And I
Now,
think
is that gonna? Because it's
it's a-
already, they do the Lao New Year every year. Is that going to?
So there's nothing against pre-existing projects per se. Like there's nothing that if you have already created a project, there's nothing that's saying that you can't apply for funding for that project. But the number 1 rule, right, is nothing. The grant cannot pay for anything, any expenses that have been incurred before the award. Also know that we have no control how a panel will view a project that already exists. We have no way to be able to, we can't say, well, make sure that, this, you look at this project like this, because we have no control over that, how an individual panels will look at that.
But I wonder if you could if you could argue that it would be its own project that is presented at the Lao New Year.
Yeah.
Oh, so in that, what do you think? I mean, That's how I'm kind of viewing it. As long as it's in the narrative that it's this Allow New Year already exists, but this is a new component, this project to bring in to the Allow New Year.
I would definitely add that into the narrative. Like, so if you're doing something for an event that pre-exists as part of the grant, hit home why what you are doing with this funding is in particular like a slightly different than what's happened in the past.
Okay.
Right? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, I kind of understand that like criteria is like COVID-19, like encouraging people like doing their civic duties.
Yeah.
And in what is it like about our community things? Yeah. To us, when we celebrate it, that's what our mindset is, just that this grant it just came up just the
And
right.
it hits all those.
Yeah. It
And
hits
also,
all those. Yeah.
you know, Allow New Year with water is a big component, and we've got water mitigation. We've got, I mean, there's some water education that you might even be able to add to that.
Okay.
That would be perfect for, you know, the water component of Allow New Year
Okay.
to think about too. But I can work with you guys later too.
Okay.
You know, if you guys want to get together and talk this over.
Yes.
So we could try to fine tune as much as possible.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that really, and this goes for you all, and that's Colton is on y'all's side. His
If
goal
it was
is,
up to me, I'd give you get all the money. I'd be like Oprah.
his goal overall is to help you create proposals that are that you feel happy about, and that he can kind of help guide you through if you need help. And so that's what's important, I think, keeping this in mind, because so often we write these grants and we start writing them on our own, and they're there, and then we don't feel like we can reach out. And so we created this entire process to help out artists apply for grants, because we want to be able to help you apply for an arts grant, so that way you feel comfortable applying for arts grants
In the future.
in the
too.
future.
Yeah.
And knowing that this resource here in this community, and then the other arts communities, they exist, and you know we're helping them feel comfortable providing this service, so that way they feel comfortable providing it, and they give it to you. So hopefully this thing will exist beyond the grant period. So really rely on the team, and then I have an entire team in case Colton gets overloaded. And so I send someone once a week to Tuolumne, and they're up there in person in Tuolumne once a week, talking to artists. Or we're about to launch an appointment scheduling system with members of my team and even myself next week, that you're able to, do a Zoom meeting to just talk about your project, and, whatever help I can provide, I'll provide. So our goal is to help you out as much as possible.
Bless you.
What do you got?
Anything else, Andrew?
Oh, yes.
All right.
A lot.
You share further about how you might evaluate the project to ensure that the participants in the project hail from the indicated HBI/blue zone?
Oh, yes.
So to be clear, this would be the panelists that would evaluate this.
Yeah. And so one of the specific questions, and this is kind of, and on our, if you look, I think it's, let me double check this just to, oh, here we go. Program, there we go, that last page. So page 14 of the grant guidelines, we tried our best to really list out what is going to be evaluated. And so what you see there, those six questions are how everything is being evaluated by the panel. So that way, as you're writing the grant, you know what's going to be evaluated.
Let me read this out real quick. The six, and this is in the guidelines that are on the website. How does a project proposal fit the program focus area? Project design, community engagement, management, budget, and timeline. So those are the six components we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And so primarily what we're looking at is community engagement, right? And what we're looking about is how your project engages the communities in this bottom quartile. which communities you are engaging. This all is part of the narrative that you're constructing for us, and that's what gets evaluated. As far as specific artists from the communities, that kind of goes into the management item that you're able to fill out when you're listing the key personnel that you're utilizing. Even though you're not listing a specific bio or a specific name, a lot of times when you're filling out that section, you might say, I'm utilizing storytellers from this community, and we're constructing this outdoor theater piece with all of these stories that these guys will be delivering. So so stuff like that goes into your narrative, and that again is when we're training the panelists, is the stuff that we're inviting them to look for when they're scoring.
And then I think they had more of a question on the HPI.
Yeah, I think it was just part of the same question. Just how do you evaluate for sure that the participants are actually coming from that, that particular area?
And so that's just it's really based off of the proposal that you're writing. If you're showcasing that you are actually truly engaging these communities and utilizing these communities to produce art, usually becomes pretty.
I think in the narrative, make sure
clear.
to make it clear where you're targeting your project. That would be part of the HPI, and where your artists are coming from as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Come on up, Oscar.
I was thinking in terms of physical space, for example, thinking about individual artists or emergent artists, or even myself, that I live with other 3 roommates, and I was telling David that maybe we can think about doing some sculpture with the stones. I'm not sure how the neighbors would feel about it. So I was thinking maybe if there are already alliances between institutions, I'm thinking like Merced Community College, maybe, or UC Merced, or here, or the street, or maybe the lake. That could be someplace good. So yeah, I think.
So a location to create your work, is that?
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect opportunity to work with Colton to start finding places to be able to display it, because we can reach out to city officials, the college, and be like, hey, this is part of the project that an artist is looking for a place to be able to produce this, and that will open up a whole other set of like what they may expect, like their expectations. So.
You mean like a kind of a studio space to create?
Like a taller studio. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking like low riders, for example, or maybe I can include that into the budget. Maybe like going to the car shop.
For sure, I think you could rent studio space if you needed to, depending on what you need, where your needs are. That would be in the budget.
It is, yeah. That's part of that extra 20%. That Creative Corps line item can be utilized for a studio space rental.
Yeah, and two, think of. That money goes back into our community, as well. So it'd be money well spent, but it will also help you with your project. And do you have places in mind where this project would end up already? Are you working on that?
I don't know. As for myself, I always like to give my pieces away, but
but you don't tell me. But you have
an exhibition in here, maybe, or
so it could be like
something like that. I think it could be.
Well, anyway, you know how to reach me. So if you want to discuss this more, get in contact with me. Okay, figure some things out.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Oscar. Any more online?
Yeah, what if an artist doesn't have a letter of recommendation or any past projects due to the fact that they live in an area where art projects are rare?
You'll notice, and I believe it's on the application that it is. We require it in the guidelines, but as far as filling out the application, that is not actually required when you fill out the application, and a lot of that is for that exact purpose. So we encourage you to contact one of our partner agencies to see if they can help you develop that. or put you in contact with a way for that to be developed, because there are ways that we could help you with that, but that shouldn't preclude you from actually filling out the grant application.
Can the project be conducted in multiple rural areas within the same city or county?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want to list the areas that you'll be working in, especially in the planning, the implementation phase, as well as whether you're producing this. I mean, it goes back to film, right? Like it's, you know, we're not asking you to create your film project in just this one area, especially if you have a scope. We're not even asking you to think just in Merced County, where, you know, we had talked earlier about artists that were interested in producing a series in each one of our representative counties. Like that's on the table as well. We ask that you list when on part of the application, we ask the county that you're representing. And what that does is that sends you to the appropriate resource that we have for you. So even though if you're creating something in all 3 counties, list your primary county, because then that puts you in contact with the partner agency we're trying to put you in contact with.
Is there any advantage for established nonprofit organizations requesting money versus independent artists kickstarting their community project?
The number one benefit to utilizing a nonprofit is then you don't have to deal with the IRS at the end of this. And that's kind of a joke, but that's also kind of very accurate. So it depends on the level of project that you're requesting. There doesn't have to be any difference between you as a community member jumpstarting your own project and working within your community, other than the fact that sometimes nonprofits will have some sort of backbone, an apparatus already in place that might help kind of
Give you some resources. Lets you tap into an already established audience base. So those are those benefits. But if you are fully on your own and you're your own artist, like we don't look at it any differently. We don't say we're going to look at nonprofits first and then individual artists. You're all coming to this playing field even. You're all coming with the same amount of power. Eddie, yeah.
I have 3 questions. I can ask one at a time, or
go all 3.
Okay, sure.
At this point, right?
Yeah, might as well.
So let's say when you're considering the budget, let's say you hire a service, whether it be a metal worker, publisher, print house, whatever it may be. What are you listing them under? Do you have to list like maybe the head person, because it's kind of like a service you're using to make your project, but they're not necessarily artists on board in your project, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think you just have to distinguish what is an artist in that case. I mean, I don't know, a publisher, I would say, would be in the budget part.
Yeah, probably in the budget. The physical recreation, like the metal worker, and that's the thing, is like
metal worker. Yeah, it depends what they're doing, right?
Gotcha.
If it's part of the art that you're creating, then they're an artist.
Okay.
Yeah, is the metal work and creating a piece at the end of the day? Will, you know, is it more of a structural piece, or is it a actual like artistic, you know, sculpture piece? Or, you know, I think being able to determine that is perfectly acceptable, and just describing that in the budget works.
Okay.
Publisher probably goes into that Creative Corps line item, and again, all of that, you know, we encourage you to put into the budget, and then when we look through it, like we'll reach out to you if we have any issues. But not only that, we'll reach out to you to maybe give you some ideas. And like, wait, have you considered that this person is an artist, or have you considered that this is where this should go?
Got you.
For an example, that we were looking at a sample budget anyway of someone that put down like they're renting, or what was it? A sound studio.
Sound studio.
Now, is that sound studio? Is it just a sound studio, or is it the sound editor? You know, is this person
mixer,
going
right?
to
You know,
sound mixer that's going to be adding to a film or to some music? Then they're an artist. If it's just a studio, then that's to the other budget, right? That you're renting this. So
Gotcha.
there are differences there.
Gotcha.
But if it's this studio owner, that's the studio editor, the music editor, then that's an artist.
That
So
makes sense.
those-
But there would be a line item for a publisher, you're saying, or like a print shop or something like that.
I'd have to, I have to really think about that. I'd have to look at the proposal and actually kind of look it out as far as like a print shop, because at print shop, rather than a print shop, maybe it's just printing. So you're talking more about supplies, like you're talking, and that's where that kind of would go. As far as the publisher, it depends, right? Because the publisher is, what is the publisher actually doing for this project that's supposed to be created for free?
Gotcha.
Is really, the publisher to me sounds like someone that is coming at the end of the process.
Yeah.
And so that needs to be separate,
Gotcha.
Because if you're like doing illustrations, you've got the illustrator that's an artist.
Yeah.
If it's a poet, you got the poet getting paid. So those are.
So I guess like maybe like if somebody was manufacturing a book, like somebody has to physically make that book.
Yeah.
And you hire, or you basically are hiring a company to print something for you.
Yes.
What line item would that go under?
Yeah.
Just
okay.
Yeah. Because keep in mind what you're doing is you're printing enough copies to showcase to the community for free.
Yeah.
And then after that, your work that you created is to yours and yours alone. So that's where that separation exists, right?
Gotcha. And then in terms of the letter recommendation, is the person addressing it to Heartland, or is a
HeARTland, HeARTland Creative Corps.
Okay. And then let's say your project is trying to reach a certain demographic, like maybe all musicians in our county or all actors in our county. Can you have some wiggle room in terms of figuring out how many of those there's going to be? Because maybe you find more as the project is going on, or maybe like, should you set like a kind of like a parameter? Like, I'm going to try to help 200 actors in our county, but if I can help more, I'm going to try to help more.
Would all of them be receiving a salary?
Gotcha.
No, that would be my question. Would they be receiving a salary? Or would they be receiving
no, they'd be
some funding?
receiving. I don't know if service would be the right word, but they would be receiving something that increases their opportunities.
Okay. And so what level of funding would they be getting? I think that's what I'm not
Gotcha.
getting. I'm just not connecting that yet.
Yeah.
So you're trying to reach 200 actors. So what is the what is the money being spent to reach those 200 actors? Is that what you're asking?
So what if there was a way to highlight those actors so they're now getting more opportunities, not only our county, but outside of our county? And so you're trying to include them so that they can get more opportunities.
I think I would have to see the proposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
Eddie. But maybe that's a conversation that we, could have.
Sure.
I'm trying to do it. I know you don't want to be specific because you don't want to give it all away.
Yeah.
And maybe this is something I can bring up to him, and then we can figure this out.
Okay.
I think. And I know how specific. I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, absolutely.
All right. I appreciate
But
it.
then the only reason why Eddie has a specific project in mind, but he's not trying to give it away. So that's
I respect that.
yeah. Any more, Andrew?
Two questions that I think kind of go hand in hand. The first one is, can journalism, as an artist that became a teacher, can I show my students' art, or students' work rather, as part of my portfolio? And then the second question is, can an artist submit multiple letters for recommendation?
I believe we only asked for one. Let me see. Let me look. I want to, again, stay true to what it feels like so long ago.
So I'm assuming this artist would be like the lead artist that might be doing some workshops or something.
That's how I
Perhaps.
would phrase
So
it. Yeah.
I think the images of their teacher, their students' work, I think would be sufficient for examples or samples of past work.
I would only upload one letter of recommendation.
Now, when they do a letter of recommendation, and this has come up a few times, it's one letter of recommendation, but can they put maybe a list of references?
Yeah.
And they could do as many references as they would want.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think it's been hard for artists to choose just one reference and hard to choose the best one, or not reference, but a letter of recommendation. But if they have, references too, that's helpful.
Yeah, but
My sub, help them.
choose one artist. Choose one. Sorry. Too difficult, but choose one.
Any more questions here in the audience? Physical audience? Online, Andrew?
They would like to know if journalistic projects, which would be like a journalist covering local events with an emphasis on promoting local artists / cultural events, would those be considered for funding in this grant program?
Would journalism be considered an art form?
But it depends on what the end project is, I think, right? I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna accumulate to something. So maybe a magazine, perhaps, or a booklet, or a catalog. That could be considered a project.
Yeah, it was very specific. We would need to see, right, the proposal that's being requested. Like what exactly? I'm not saying that journalism is not an art form, right? And so because it involves a lot, of the techniques. But what we'd have to see is what is being created, and it has to go beyond just I would be providing X amount of stories, in my opinion. And I got to be clear that, and to be clear again, like what we're doing now is other than facts about the guidelines, like we are giving you in general, like our opinion, both as a representative of United Way and an artist, and then as a representative as your partner agency. So, and I think our opinions are valid and we've helped out a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it is still our opinion. So feel free to get other opinions, especially with the grants that you're writing, like feel free to get those. So I just want to be clear about that. But I'm like, this is the end all be all. It's not, right? And this is the problem with art in general, right? There's no clear cut answers to anything. So we're just going to keep telling you.
Well, to go along with journalism, there's photojournalism too. There's photography, and that's definitely an art. And I think you could argue that journalism is an art, but I think what the thing is, what that end project is. I mean, is it about the artists? Is it about our community of artists? I think there's something there. I just don't know what the real details and what the actual project is going to be, and how that end project, how is it going to be distributed ultimately to the community? For that ultimate impact. For presentation. So that's another kind of like a one-on-one kind of conversation that we have to kind of develop this thing. I think. Any more questions here?
Real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey,
don't be sorry, please.
We're never coming back after that.
So first question is cooking considered an art?
Culinary arts.
Yeah. All right.
Food brings people together. I mean, I think you have to really put in the narrative how it's culinary art.
Okay.
It's not just cooking.
Yeah.
This is the joy of providing a really diverse 7-person panel, because you get different backgrounds and how people view. So we train them on not coming in with these preconceived notions of what art is. And so I would agree that it's art. So that's.
I say that, but now, like, the California Arts Council rule is like, what about food? Buying food and stuff. I mean, would that be a problem? Is that something we have to look into?
Yeah. We can look into that.
So these things sometimes could be so complicated.
I would say that culinary arts is an art form.
I would say that too. That would be my argument.
All the other things we can talk about later.
Yeah, because that's my follow-up question was that if it's culinary art, if we buy food, like a material to make the food and
that
stuff,
material.
And then we would give it free to the
food. It's not like you're just. They don't want. I think what their guidelines are meaning is that they don't want to have food like you're buying food for a reception or something like that. This is like presentation. This is
right.
You're buying basically the food is material. The ingredients are material for your ultimate presentation of this culinary art.
I believe that in most grants, supplies are defined as materials or items that were consumed in the process of this this grant period. Okay. I just think most grants say that.
Consumed.
But but generally speaking, a supply is something that was used up during the grant. So you've purchased this food, you've purchased this things that you've created this piece of art with. So so the food is just, your
material.
canvas, it's your material.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think you could argue that.
Yeah. And the other one is I'm hearing that one organization can only work on one project. Or are we talking about it can have one project for the different focus area?
it's one project. So it's defined. So there's a different thing. Is the project that you're creating, is it a one-off or is it a series? And so it becomes very simple when you're dealing with, this came up last month or when we were talking about a muralist, right? And this muralist is creating these murals in 3 different communities as a part of a series. And each mural, it deals with something different, but there's a common thread that makes it a series rather than just a series of 3 completely different murals. So if you're planning on multiple events, you want to make sure that there's a common thread, through line that puts them all together, and that's how you present in your proposal.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. One last time. Any last?
I have one more.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's just one last question. I think it's pretty simple about the letter of recommendation.
Okay.
Somebody just wants to know, what would be the ideal person to write the letter of recommendation?
Well, ideally, someone who knows your work, who knows your work ethic. It could be a teacher. It could be an employer. It could be someone that you've worked with on other projects. Those are just some.
It's someone that can attest to your level to handle the scope of the project that you are saying that you're going to produce. So if you are that muralist that's tackling 3 different large murals in 3 different counties, have someone that can attest to that says so-and-so has, I've worked with them on numerous projects over the course of 1 year where they did this, this, and this, right? So what you're doing is you're finding someone that can say, yeah, this person can do the work that they're proposing.
Yeah.
No matter who it is, just someone that can basically say that.
Yep.
And then if they have an arts background or a community background, or they happen to be located in one of these communities that needs this art, then that helps as well.
Okay, I'm gonna one more time. Any more questions? Inkling of questions? That's like on the tip of your brain. Okay. Anything you want to add, Rob?
The one thing that I can add is that you're gonna want to not turn in the project. You're gonna want to not do the grant, and I cannot tell you the amount of grants that I've written or received that I never thought I was going to get, but I wrote it anyway, and I did the work and received it, and that includes this grant that all started with just, hey, can we do this as a group, as a team? And I was like, I don't know. This is not something that I've ever done before, but I did it anyway, and now we have all of this funding coming into these 3 counties. So even if you don't think that you have the experience, if you don't think that you have the ability, if you are doubting your place as an artist, I still would invite you to complete the grant, because you will have that time period, hopefully, if you get it in soon, right, where a member of our team will contact you and try and help you do this, because we don't want to judge how well you write a grant, right? That's not our goal. We want to help you create the project that you want to create for the community that you want to create it for. And so don't get discouraged by the grant, by the guidelines, by the online portal. Don't get discouraged. Let us help you with that. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, because it's intimidating.
It is.
Yeah.
It's intimidating. It's just not common. I think I don't know how many people here have applied for a grant. I've only done it once before, and that was like, oh, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah.
I heard
Did it, but it's like, it's overwhelming.
I heard a story of this group, and this group has worked professionally all over the state and worked for big names. And I'm talking very wealthy people just in LA and they have their act together. And, you know, there's someone that you can look up to and they're like, I need help. And they're not even writing a grant for our area, right? But they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And you're like, what do you mean? They're like, I don't know this. Like, you want me to walk into a room and talk to like some guy that makes, you know, 7 figures? I can do that. Like, I can do that easy, but actually sitting down and actually to write a grant, like that intimidates me because it's intimidating. And so that's why we're here. We tried to adapt a process and a grant that is as easy as we can make it within the confines of working with the state. And so, and hopefully at this point, our team knows it really well. And whether or not you're in Merced or Stanislaus or Tuolumne, like we know this pretty well at this point. So let us help you. And because at the very end of the day, maybe you won't get it, right? Maybe you will not get the grant that you applied for, but maybe you do. And maybe at that point it becomes changing for you. So,
And also, if you don't get this grant, you've gone through this process. And you've got a project in mind now too for another grant opportunity, or we have a Parks and Rec, not Parks. We have an Arts and Culture Advisory Commission to the city that now has some funding. You could make these proposals to them and hopefully maybe get some funding that way. There are other opportunities, but now you're going to have an idea of a project and some real thought behind it, budget, how you're going to implement it. And this is a good starting off point for it to continue. So don't give up there if you don't get this grant. And don't give up if you don't get the full grant. There's still ways of getting money so you can get this project off and going.
yeah.
So, well, he just answered me, so I just want to know if there is a turn down. You might not qualify or we're not getting the grant.
You might not
No,
get the.
but you already answered me. That's why I was just going to
Yeah.
say when she said
Yeah.
it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
If somebody never, write a grant before, it's afraid it's going to be turned down.
Yeah.
We're never going to get grant. So there is a turn down.
And just because you might not get this grant, don't feel rejected. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. It just is. Who knows, for whatever reason. I've heard of so many amazing ideas going through this project, and I know not everyone's going. I mean, there's only so much money we have, and so I think it's going to be really difficult for these panelists to score these. It's just going to be really difficult. Obviously, we're not all going to get the funding that we need, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve it. And so I would encourage too, after this, if you don't get this grant funding, even after this, I'm willing to work with you to make sure that we get it some other time, through some other grant process or through other sources of funds. So don't give up there. This is just the beginning of that. And I'd encourage, that if you get rejected from this this process of the HeARTland Corps grant, don't stop there with this. Apply again. I mean, now you've gone through this process. You've got something. You got to get in the habit of writing these grants. You just kind of do, and you'll be better for it, I think, for applying for future grants. And we're hoping that this won't be the only funding we get. The California Arts Council knows that we're kind of a desert when it comes to arts funding, and so now the idea is that we're going to get not necessarily $1 million or millions of dollars in our area, but we'll get some funding. And we'll be able to re-grant that funding to our artists locally. And so don't give up hope there. We're advocating for more funding in our area because we desperately need it, because we deserve it, because we have the amazing artists here of all forms and different cultural organizations that need that funding. And so please don't give up. This is just the beginning.
And please talk to a licensed financial advisor. Yes. I can't stress that enough, especially if you're an individual artist and you're applying. Please do that first, because if you're applying for life-changing money, keep in mind that there's strings attached to that. So just keep that in mind.
And just follow up. Go to HeARTland Grant, HeARTlandCreativeCorps.org. You can go to artsmerced.org. all these websites. Contact me at director@artsmerced.org to schedule an appointment or follow-up questions or anything like that. Call me here at 209-388-1090. Ask for Colton. And I'm happy to help you. I'm sure at Rob as well.
Yeah, but I'm not giving out any of my information because.
But
not doing
info, I think it's info@HeARTlandCreativeCorps.org.
And like I said, we'll be releasing a scheduling ability to make appointments. That way you can talk one-on-one specifically about your idea or even about specific questions regarding the grant. So we're here for you, especially over the next few weeks, just to make sure that you all feel comfortable. So thank you.
All right, thank you all for being here in person. Thanks everyone that's online.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks Andrew for being our tech guy. Give him a round of applause.
Oh goodness.
Wondering, am I back here again? The shadow inside, waking your soul. What's mine is lost to time, our home is in the space. The birdie walks the line, just use those wings and rise. Ooh, mother, open your eyes. Ooh, mother, this magic's just begun. Ooh, mother, reach for my heart so I can feel this essence of me. Time to wake up in these rise and sleep. Days may be hard, but the truth in bringing up the vibration. You can feel it in your feet. What's there to hold in the light of this moon? My mind keeps searching, but my heart decides. Thoughts can be cruel, they're not mine to hold. The space unravels.